Hello. I've tried to assemble some clips to clarify and help people understand what's happened in Benghazi and why it's so important that Congress and the FBI follow through on their findings and actually prosecute somebody over this. In the first clip, I watched this on YouTube and was so disgraced and disgusted I decided that I had to do something. Even the smallest of us, if one or two people read this, I think I've accomplished something. So hopefully before somebody may take it down, I hope a few people get to watch it. In the crowd, people in this first clip, again, I was just disgusted to see the age groups, the 30 to 60-year-olds in the Clinton rally, where Bill was trying to cut down a young boy that I just have so much pride to know he stands up for us and our country when there's such a terrible person just trying to tear him to pieces. I'm disgusted that the age group of people that I saw in the audience have forgotten Nina, the drug airport, allegedly ran by the Clintons and the Bushes. And people must have forgotten that Bill had been impeached as the United States president for lying. And what makes you think that Hillary's any better? Remember what started all this Middle East confrontation was over the African and Middle Eastern nations were trying to form a new currency called the Pan-African currency. Libya was invaded, and from Libya, Benghazi has all come about because Hillary, as State Department head, was involved in covering up arms being smuggled out of Libya into terrorist hands in Turkey and in Syria. Again, remember, Benghazi was over arms being sent into Syria illegally. That's it. The most important thing is a high-impact weapon called the Stinger missile, and 400 were missing. And our ambassador was killed because he tried to tell the State Department that he found these weapons and was trying to negotiate a buyback on them to keep them from falling into even worse hands. Just remember, everybody, if Hillary Clinton gets into office, her priority is to get Bill Clinton made the Secretary General of the UN. And just to show you the establishment has a plan B, if Hillary's thrown under the bus by the current administration, Joe Biden will be made the presidential candidate. If Joe Biden wins, he's going to make Obama the head of the UN. So that's their agenda, that's what's happened, that's why it's happened. Now, interestingly enough, how people that think they're so smart get caught. The FSB, which is the CIA equivalent of the Russian Secret Service, has all of Hillary's emails. The World Court found that these emails were not taken from a secured, regulated federal server, so espionage was thrown out the window. And Hillary's basically dug her own grave because these emails, if Congress or the FBI wanted them, could get them. Again, they were taken off of Hillary's private server, which is not a federally regulated server. So a lot of the laws and stuff for espionage aren't relevant because they don't exist. So just so, you know, somebody that thinks they're so smart can even get caught when the lies get so desperate that you can't even keep up with them anymore. So I beg everybody, do a little bit of reading. But again, I'm ashamed at the 30 to 50-year-olds that have children and grandchildren that are going to have to live in this world, this very bad individual makes it into the presidency. I can't even imagine our country. The KSP used those emails, by the way, to convict a terrorist within their own military establishment by the name of Nadia, Nadiya Savchenko, which is Savchenko. And the U.S. government tried to interfere with this prosecution with the use of these emails and was basically struck down by the world courts also. So I call on the FBI and Congress to do the right thing. Again, we all have children, and we all have grandchildren, and if we want to leave something besides a police state, please vote with your heart. Thanks.
Just like your college friend, how you did 8 years active duty service, 2 tours to Iraq. I had platoon of 31. I had 7 that were killed, 6 wounded beyond return. We got hit hard, and I know there's a lot of military, probably people in the crowd with military service members, and I'm anxious to get to the VA. You covering that? I'm not sure, so I wanted to get in there, and hopefully you can get to it. But I mean, I know that we've had.
Let's talk about the VA now. I'll come back to this.
We have loved ones that we want to hear about, that we care about, and I have met with many of these Gold Star parents and families, so I've seen them.
What do you think should be done with the VA?
I've seen them mourn, and the thing is that we had 4 lives in Benghazi that were killed, and your wife tried to cover it up. And just put
Go ahead.
going over those 4 lives. Those 4 lives, those 4 American lives. If someone lost their grandchild, their son, their brother, as I've talked, yes, I was a Marine. I was an infantry unit out in California. I was a Marine drill instructor out here at Paris Island.
Thank you for your service.
I trained every recruit, regardless of religion, race, color.
Okay, now can I answer?
All of them exactly the same.
He has a right to speak. Yeah, and his criminal wife.
Let me answer. This is America. I didn't answer back. You listen to me. I heard you. I heard your speech. They heard your speech. You listen to me.
Of the Benghazi.
Do I have a right to answer? I'm not your commander-in-chief anymore, but if I were, I'd tell you to be more polite. Sit down.
I wouldn't listen. I would just raise my voice.
You can't touch him.
I'm not resisting. But the bottom line is that I would. And I have put my life on the line.
Do you have... Wait. Do you have the courage to listen to my answer? Don't throw him out. If you'll shut up and listen to my answer, I'll answer it.
Like my brother, they gave their life.
Look, can I just say something? That's what's wrong. His mind has been poisoned by lies, and he won't listen.
Hillary lied over 4 coffins. 4 coffins. She lied, and she lied to his family. So all those families are liars? No, all those families are liars. I want to know. Did she lie?
Will you give me a chance to answer?
What answer? Did she lie?
Will you give me a chance?
Did she lie?
No.
She didn't lie. Those families are lying?
Let's go through it. Will you listen
No, I'm
to me?
not going to shut up. It's my turn.
Closing embassies in the Middle East due to what a senior official tells us is more than the usual chatter about a terrorist threat. The closures include main diplomatic facilities in Egypt, Libya, Iraq, and Kuwait. The senior U.S. official says the facilities will close on Sunday, which is ahead of the end of Ramadan in the middle of next week, and of course, coming very close to the anniversary of the attack on the American compound in Benghazi. And that brings me to our second story out front, which is new details that we have just discovered at CNN on the CIA's secret presence in Benghazi. A lot of the scrutiny over last year's attack, in which 4 Americans died, is focused on the State Department. But we are learning for the first time how heavily involved the CIA was in Benghazi, something the agency has gone to incredible lengths to conceal. Drew Griffin has an out-front investigation.
CNN has learned the CIA is involved in what one source calls an unprecedented attempt to keep the spy agency's Benghazi secrets from ever leaking out. Since January, Some CIA operatives involved in the agency's missions in Libya have been subjected to frequent, even monthly polygraph examinations, according to a source with deep inside knowledge of the agency's working. The goal of the questioning, according to sources, is to find out if anyone is talking to the media or Congress. It's being described as pure intimidation, with the threat that any unauthorized CIA employee who leaks information could face the end of his or her career. In exclusive communications obtained by CNN, one insider writes, "You don't jeopardize yourself, you jeopardize your family as well." Another says, "You have no idea the amount of pressure being brought to bear on anyone with knowledge of this operation."
Agency employees typically are polygraphed every 3 to 4 years, never more than that.
The rate of this kind of polygraphing is rare, according to former CIA operatives, including Robert Baer, now a national security analyst for CNN.
If somebody is being polygraphed every month or every 2 months, it's called an issue polygraph, and that means that the polygraph division suspects something, or they're looking for something, or they're on a fishing expedition. But it's absolutely not routine at all to be polygraphed monthly or bi-monthly or whatever.
In a statement from CIA Public Affairs Director Dean Boyd, the agency asserted it's being open with Congress. The CIA has worked closely with its oversight committees to provide them with an extraordinary amount of information related to the attack on U.S. facilities in Benghazi, the statement reads. CIA employees are always free to speak to Congress if they want, and that the CIA enabled all officers involved in Benghazi the opportunity to meet with Congress. We are not aware of any CIA employee who has experienced retaliation, including any non-routine security procedures, or who has been prevented from sharing a concern with Congress about the Benghazi incident. Among the many secrets still yet to be told about the Benghazi mission is just how many Americans were there. The night Ambassador Chris Stevens and 3 others were killed. CNN has now learned that number was 35, with as many as 7 wounded, some seriously. While it's still not known how many of them were CIA, a source tells CNN 21 Americans were working in the building known as the Annex, believed to be run by the agency. The lack of information and pressure to silence CIA operatives is disturbing to Congressman Frank Wolf, whose district includes CIA headquarters in Langley, Virginia.
Congressman, what do you think is going on here? Is this an elaborate attempt to cover this whole thing up and push it under the rug?
I think it is a form of a cover-up, and I think there is an attempt to push it under the rug, and I think the American people feel the same way. We should have the people who are on the scene come in, testify under oath, do it publicly, and lay it out. And there really isn't any national security issue involved with regard to that.
The chair recognizes the gentleman from Virginia.
Wolf has repeatedly gone to the House floor asking for a select House committee be set up, involving several Intelligence Committee investigators assigned to get to the bottom of the failures that took place in Benghazi. More than 150 fellow Republican congressmen have signed his request, and just this week, 8 Republicans, including senators and members of Congress, sent a letter to the new head of the FBI asking he brief Congress within 30 days. Aaron, speculation on Capitol Hill has been that the U.S. agencies involved in Benghazi at the time were actually helping to move arms, specifically surface-to-air missiles from Libyan rebels through Turkey to the rebels fighting in Syria. Now, we know of 2 U.S. agencies operating in Libya at the time. One was the State Department, the other was the CIA. We did reach out to the State Department, who told us that they were only helping the new Libyan government destroy weapons that were deemed damaged, aged, or too unsafe to retain, and that the State Department was not involved in any transfer of weapons to any other countries. The State Department did not say anything. They could not speak, they said, for any other agencies involved. That would be the CIA. And Aaron, when you speak about missions to the CIA, they flatly will not discuss it. Aaron?
Drew, thank you very much. And of course, as we all know, right before that attack, Ambassador Stevens had been meeting with emissaries from Turkey. As you know, we have devoted much of our program over the past year to the Benghazi attack and its aftermath. Please join us on Tuesday night, 10 o'clock Eastern, for a special out-front investigation, The Truth About Benghazi. We're going to take you back to that night nearly a year ago, talk to a suspect who even the FBI hasn't gotten a hold of, and most importantly, we are going to be speaking to the families of those who lost their lives. That's Tuesday night at 10 o'clock Eastern, 7 Pacific.
President impeached by the House of Representatives.
On this vote, the yeas are 228, the nays are 206. Article 1 is adopted.
After the inauguration in 1993, the Clintons fired the White House Travel Office employees, allowing their wealthy Hollywood friends to take over the lucrative travel business. This led to investigations by the FBI, DOJ, GAO, Oversight Committee, and the Whitewater Independent Counsel. The Clintons claimed the firings were due to financial misdeeds, but the employees were cleared on all counts. Hillary Clinton allegedly played a central role in the firings, yet in her sworn testimony, she claimed she was not involved. The independent counsel found this to be factually inaccurate and that she made factually false statements. The Clintons were forced to remove their friends and reinstate the previous employees. Vince Foster, the longtime friend and companion of Hillary Clinton, was significantly involved in several Clinton scandals. Due to the strange circumstances surrounding his death in 1993, an investigation ensued. Before the police arrived, Clinton staffers illegally removed boxes of documents on Whitewater and presumably Travelgate and other sensitive issues. President Clinton put his wife in charge of the most expensive program in the country. There was a national outrage that the unelected, unqualified First Lady was going to design America's healthcare system. In a 1993 interview, Hillary Clinton admitted, "I am not an expert on healthcare. I'm not somebody who has studied it." Hillary Clinton kept the Presidential Task Force on National Healthcare Reform shrouded in such secrecy that a federal judge threatened to hold the administration in contempt. 2 years later, the healthcare plan was a 1,342-page nightmare, including gatekeepers, health alliances, purchasing cooperatives, new and higher taxes, and restrictions on choosing doctors. Physicians, hospitals, large and small businesses, insurance companies, Democrats, Republicans, and the general public rejected the program, and it failed disastrously. The General Accounting Office put a price tag of $32 million on Hillary Clinton's healthcare fiasco. For dishonesty, Hillary Clinton and others were fined $450,000. Court costs to taxpayers were $725,000. In 1996, with Hillary Care fresh in their minds, Americans voted both the Senate and the House into Republican hands for the first time in over 4 decades. In 1994, President Clinton's Attorney General Janet Reno initiated an investigation focusing on fraud accusations against the Clintons regarding their real estate venture, Whitewater Development Corporation, co-owned with their friends Jim and Susan McDougal. Hillary Clinton was the central figure, and the probe revealed pervasive conflicts of interest between the Rose Law Firm, where Hillary Clinton was partner, and its client, Madison Guarantee, owned by Clinton business partner Jim McDougal. Hillary Clinton claimed billing records subpoenaed and critical to the investigation were lost. It is presumed they were stolen from Vince Foster's office the night he died. 19 months later, following the Clintons' acquittal, many of the missing records reappeared in the Clintons' residence. As they were covered with Hillary Clinton's fingerprints, she fell under suspicion of obstruction of justice. Their business partner, Susan McDougal, refused to testify against the Clintons, assuring they were not charged. Susan McDougal went to prison for her silence, but was pardoned by President Clinton. 15 Clinton associates were convicted of 40 federal crimes related to Whitewater. The independent counsel's report highlighted the president's abundant and calculating lies under oath, obstruction of justice, and abuse of power. During this case, many other alleged abuses were uncovered. The 4.5-year expanded investigation cost taxpayers $145 million. Hillary Clinton's trades in cattle futures raised suspicions of improprieties as her very first trade of $5,000 quickly turned into over $490,000. She refused to release her tax returns for the years in question. Hillary Clinton insisted that she made all the investment decisions herself. The investigation proved her trades were actually placed by her friend James Blair through the brokerage firm Refco. James Blair was outside counsel for Tyson Foods, the largest employer in Arkansas, which is state regulated. The perception was Mrs. Clinton received preferential treatment and incredible financial returns as a way to garner favor with her husband, then governor of Arkansas. Refco was investigated and paid the largest fines in the history of the exchange. The Clinton administration improperly requested and received FBI background reports on 900 Republican officials. Hillary Clinton allegedly initiated the request to add data to her enemies list, leading to 3 separate investigations in 1996. In testimony, the White House Personnel Security Director refused to name Hillary Clinton as the source of the request, and he was forced to resign. Hillary Clinton claimed she was guiltless and was called a congenital liar in the New York Times. The fund was established so individuals or companies hoping to garner favor with the president could help pay the Clintons' endless legal bills. In 1996, the Justice Department investigated campaign fundraising abuses and cover-ups by the Clintons in connection with an effort by China to influence administration policies. In violation of U.S. law, agents for the Chinese government and military funneled millions into President Clinton's re-election campaign, the Clinton Legal Defense Fund, and the DNC. The DOJ's report stated, "A pattern of events suggests a level of knowledge within the White House, including the President's and First Lady's offices, concerning the injection of foreign funds into the re-election effort." The Clintons were accused of using the IRS to harass their enemies, including Republican politicians, the White House Travel Office, the NRA, Judicial Watch, the Heritage Foundation, and other conservative organizations. A senior IRS official admitted that Clinton opponents were singled out for tax audits. Also audited were Bill Clinton's female accusers, including Jennifer Flowers, Paula Jones, Juanita Broaddrick, and Elizabeth Ward Grayson. As he was leaving office in January 2001, President Clinton pardoned 450 people for crimes ranging from cocaine trafficking to kidnapping and terrorism. Several pardons personally benefited Hillary Clinton and were investigated for direct ties to her New York Senate bid. Mark Rich, a billionaire fugitive, owed the government over $160 million and was charged with tax evasion, wire fraud, racketeering, and trading with Iran. Rich's ex-wife, Denise Rich, a close friend of the Clintons, donated over $600,000 to the Clinton Presidential Library just prior to the pardon. Mrs. Rich also gave $14,000 to the Clinton Legal Defense Fund and $135,000 to Hillary Clinton's Senate campaign. The New Square Four were elders of a Republican voting Hasidic community convicted of defrauding the government of millions of dollars. Candidate Clinton met with their grand rabbi. Hillary Clinton received their votes, and the New Square Four received their pardons. Hillary Clinton claimed, "I did not play any role whatsoever in the pardons." Hillary Clinton's brother, lawyer Hugh Rodham, charged high fees to use his family influence to obtain presidential pardons. Carlos Vignali, a Los Angeles drug lord, paid Rodham over $500,000 and his sentence for cocaine trafficking was commuted. Almond Braswell, a scam artist, paid Rodham over $250,000 and was pardoned for defrauding senior citizens of millions of dollars. Fighting for Puerto Rican independence, the FALN exploded 138 bombs in New York City, Chicago, and Puerto Rico. During a 10-year reign of terror, 13 innocent people were killed and over 80 were maimed. New York City Councilman Jose Rivera met with Hillary Clinton proposing pardons for FALN members in return for Puerto Rican support in her Senate race. 2 days later, President Clinton pardoned 16 FALN terrorists. These pardons were condemned by Democrats and Republicans, the House and Senate, the FBI, the U.S. Attorney, the Federal Bureau of Prisons, and the Fraternal Order of Police. Another probe into Clinton wrongdoing ensued. When Congress requested additional information, President Clinton claimed executive privilege, preventing anyone involved with the pardons from testifying. Hillary Clinton claimed no involvement in or prior knowledge of the decision. Former Democratic President Jimmy Carter called these shameless pardons disgraceful. The largest political fundraiser in U.S. history became the largest election fraud in history. In the year 2000, the fundraiser for Hillary Clinton's New York Senate race was attended by 1,300 people, including the Hollywood elite and the Democratic leadership. In violation of federal election statutes, an individual, Peter Paul, financed the entire event. Peter Paul was also a convicted cocaine trafficker. In violation, Hillary Clinton was involved with the solicitation of funds and the coordination of the gala. In violation, Hillary Clinton requested in writing an additional $150,000 from Peter Paul in untraceable securities. The Clinton campaign's filings with the Federal Elections Committee stated the event only cost $500,000. The actual price tag was $1.5 million. Senator Clinton was fined over $50,000 for purposely underreporting the cost of the event. In another campaign finance fraud, Hillary Clinton ignored FBI warnings and accepted over $900,000 from scam artist and felon Norman Sue. Hillary Clinton's Senate tenure was undistinguished. In 7 years, she introduced only 3 minor bills which became law, including the naming of a post office. She helped secure millions in federal assistance for a New York developer. Ethics questions arose when the businessman donated over $120,000 to the Clinton Foundation. Senator Clinton did not support English as the official language of the United States government, and she enthusiastically voted for the Iraq War resolution. Hillary Clinton ignored Senate rules and reporting requirements for the hiring of staff and non-paid fellows, breaking the Senate Code of Official Conduct and hiding multiple conflicts of interest. She was investigated by the Senate Select Committee on Ethics. Hillary Clinton's long history of campaign finance abuses continued. Jeffrey Thompson and other fundraising bundlers for her failed 2008 presidential campaign pled guilty to conspiracy and campaign finance law violations. In the primaries, Democrats nominated the little-known junior Senator Obama over the well-known, scandal-ridden Hillary Clinton. In 2009, President Obama nominated Hillary Clinton as Secretary of State. In 2014, the State Department spokesperson was asked to identify one tangible achievement from Hillary Clinton's 4 years as Secretary of State. She responded, "I am certain those who were here at the time, who worked hard on that effort, could point out one." Secretary Clinton's tenure had no signature doctrine or diplomatic breakthrough. It was, however, 4 more years of scandals. The Clinton State Department wasted $80 million on a U.S. consulate in northern Afghanistan, which will never be completed. Under Clinton's name, the Foreign Service gathered details on foreign diplomats, our allies and officials of the UN, including internet usernames, email addresses, credit card numbers, fingerprints, frequent flyer account numbers, and work schedules. The Clinton State Department lost approximately $6 billion due to improper filing of contracts. The FBI, CIA, and the DOJ requested that Boko Haram be designated as a terrorist group so the agencies could pursue them. Secretary Clinton declined, and the group continued its reign of terror, including the kidnapping of 300 schoolgirls in Nigeria. A special investigator for the State Department claims probes into illegal acts by the Diplomatic Security Service and ambassadors were influenced, manipulated, or simply called off under Hillary Clinton. These include sexual assaults by State Department security officials in Beirut, endemic engagement of prostitutes by Hillary Clinton's security detail, drug use by State Department contractors in Baghdad, solicitation of child male prostitutes by U.S. Ambassador to Belgium. Secretary Clinton's spokesperson claimed Hillary Clinton had no knowledge of any of the scandals in her State Department. We learned of it from the media and don't know anything beyond what's been reported. The United States mission in Benghazi, Libya, was attacked on September 11, 2012. As Hillary Clinton was Secretary of State at the time, she is at the heart of the cover-up investigation. When she finally testified to Congress 4 months after the attack, she famously stated, "The fact is we had 4 dead Americans. Was it because of a protest? Or was it because guys out for a walk one night who decided they'd go kill some Americans? What difference at this point does it make?" Hillary Clinton testified that she submitted all documents requested by Congress. 20 months later, and only through a Freedom of Information Act request, 41 new documents were released, including changes to Ambassador Susan Rice's talking points. More documents are still being withheld. The Presidential Records Act allows restricted access to documents for 12 years after leaving office. Now, 14 years later, the Clintons are still withholding thousands of records from the public. Over 300 Freedom of Information Act requests have been ignored, suggesting more damaging revelations about the Clintons. It is difficult to separate the Clintons' personal and political financial ventures from those of the Clinton Foundation. The New York Times expose on the Clinton Foundation details moral and fiscal chaos, shameless fundraising, and calls it mired in conflicts of interest. Run by old Clinton friends, it has been grossly mismanaged and, despite enormous donations, ran multi-million-dollar deficits. Already rife with conflicts of interest, the Foundation's offices are now shared by the Hillary Clinton presidential campaign. Americans can give $2,300 to presidential candidates, but there are no limits on donations to foundations. Hillary Clinton cannot legally accept campaign donations from foreigners, but no restrictions apply to foundations. Secretary of State Clinton traveled to Moscow and pressed the Russian government to purchase planes from Boeing. 2 months later, contract in hand, Boeing donated $900,000 to the Clinton Foundation. The foundation's support from foreign interests hoping to influence U.S. policy is of grave concern. Foreign donations to the foundation increased by 70% when Hillary Clinton ran for president in 2008. Saudi Arabia has financed terrorists, has an abysmal women's rights record, and punishes homosexuality by death. And yet, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia is one of the largest supporters of the Clinton Foundation. In a Clinton co-presidency, every large donation could raise suspicions of improprieties or influence peddling and lead to non-stop investigations. Many qualified and deserving politicians, Democrat and Republican, women and men, are waiting to lead this country.
Baker, stand by, if you will. I want to get to our chief intelligence correspondent, Catherine Herridge. Catherine, you were among the first to put into our urgent queue that David Petraeus has, in fact, submitted his resignation letter. And what have you learned since then, Catherine?
Well, what I've been able to learn, Trace, is that there was a chain of events this week. I was told that there was a major meeting that was set up at the CIA for Thursday of this week. It did involve bringing some principals in from out of town, and that the meeting was canceled at short notice because Director Petraeus had to take a meeting with the president. Now, what would be a standard operating procedure here is that his deputy would take that kind of meeting, but I was told the issue was such that it could only be taken by the CIA director. What I just learned from an intelligence official a short time ago is that it was on Thursday that the CIA director asked the president if he could submit his letter of resignation for personal reasons. I was not told anything more than that. And then today, that letter was accepted by the president. While the request was for personal reasons, I think we need to lay out a couple of things that have happened just in the last few weeks alone. I was also told today that there was considerable angst about a briefing that was given by the CIA last week, which laid out their timeline or their version of events of what unfolded in Benghazi, and specifically the emergency response in Benghazi. I was told, was it possible that the White House did not sanction that and the White House did not approve of that timeline because it in effect said what happened there was not our problem, it was someone else's problem. The other thing to consider, as we first reported here at Fox, is that there really was a disconnect between what lawmakers saw as the raw intelligence about Benghazi, which pointed towards a terrorist attack, and the briefings they received from the CIA director within days of that attack. If you can just stay with me, let me lay that out for you. Just a couple of days after the attack on 9/11, I was able to confirm that the FBI and the National Counterterrorism Center were briefing to lawmakers that the evidence supported, and these were telephone intercepts, that it was an al-Qaeda or an al-Qaeda-related event. And then the following day, the CIA director went up to Capitol Hill and briefed that it really did seem to be a demonstration that had spun out of control like a flash mob, and that the origination was this anti-Islam video. This disconnect really upset lawmakers who felt that there was other intelligence that pointed to a terrorist attack, though General Petraeus seemed to downplay that in his briefing. In addition, I'm told that the attack in Benghazi not only created concern about the murder of the ambassador and those 3 other Americans, but it also created great angst about the exposure of the depth and breadth of the CIA operation in Benghazi, which is largely an operation that is focused on getting these Stinger missiles off the battlefield, if you will, in Libya and out of the hands of extremists. So again, what we know right now is that he asked to be released for personal reasons. We need to take that at face value until we know otherwise. But you have to see that statement in the context of those 3 factors I've just laid out.
Yes, and Catherine, back to you quickly if I can. So it now has been confirmed that General Petraeus did have an extramarital affair. That's why he's resigning. It's rare, Catherine, a lot of things that we have seen for someone to come out and get ahead of the news curve and kind of get this thing out in the open and then resign before anybody even had wind of the affair itself. Accurate?
Well, I think you have to take it at face value because that is the statement. But again, you have to see the resignation. if it is for personal reasons, as he states, you have to see it in the context of the timing. It's coming before, I would argue, probably the biggest set of briefings and hearings on Benghazi that we will have on Capitol Hill, certainly before the end of this lame duck session. And number two, this comes really in the midst of what one may consider one of the greatest controversies of the CIA in the last decade. When I have been speaking to people about Benghazi and the closed hearings next week, they've talked about this on the scale of WMD with Iraq, that this was such a significant blow to the agency, the exposure of their presence, and really pushing them out of eastern Libya. So again, he says it's for personal reasons. I think we accept that at face value, but we have to see it in the context coming before these hearings. Not clear who will take his place at those hearings. And number two, in the context of the last 2 months and what has been very vocal dissatisfaction from some lawmakers on Capitol Hill with the quality of the brief and the presentations from the CIA director on Benghazi. Trace.
Brett, good evening. Secretary of State Kerry told House lawmakers earlier this month he doesn't want to spend the next year coming to Capitol Hill to talk about Benghazi, but new charges from within his own department could make that a reality. Fox News has learned that at least 3 career State Department employees and at least 1 more at the Central Intelligence Agency have retained lawyers or are in the process of doing so in order that they can provide sensitive information to Congress about Benghazi. The 4 consider themselves whistleblowers and want their counsel to receive the security clearances that would enable them to review classified documents. But the lawyer representing one of the employees at State told us the department is not providing a process for that, and even worse, is actively threatening her client and the others.
I'm not talking generally. I am talking specifically about Benghazi, that people have been threatened, and not just the State Department. The people have been threatened at the CIA. It's frightening, and they're taking career people and making them well aware that their careers will be over.
It was on September 11 that 4 Americans, including our ambassador to Libya, were killed in terror attacks on U.S. installations in Benghazi. Tunsing said her client has pertinent information on the months preceding the attacks, when pleas for enhanced security were rejected, on the 8-hour span of the attacks themselves, and on the 8-day period following the attacks, when the Obama administration falsely described them as the result of a spontaneous protest over a video.
So if you have additional questions or you think there's some document that somehow you need, I'll work with you to try to get it.
Secretary of State Kerry told lawmakers this month that Obama administration officials have testified at 8 Benghazi hearings, held 20 Benghazi briefings, turned over 25,000 pages of Benghazi documents, and released an unclassified version of the report prepared by the so-called Accountability Review Board. Today, Kerry's spokesman insisted all standard procedures have been followed in terms of cooperation with Congress.
I'm not aware of private counsel seeking security clearances or anything to that regard. I'm not aware of whistleblowers one way or another. Congress has its own prerogatives, but we've had a very thorough, independent investigation, which we completed and were transparent and shared, and there are many folks who are, in a political manner, trying to sort of use this for their own political means or ends.
That was a jab at Republican Congressman Darrell Issa of California, chair of the House Oversight and Government Reform Committee, who wrote to Secretary of State Kerry last week, and I quote, "The department's unwillingness to make the process for clearing an attorney more transparent appears to be an effort to interfere with the rights of employees to furnish information to Congress," unquote. That, Brett, is obviously a charge the administration rejects.
James Rosen live at the State Department tonight. James, thank you.
We have some big news to get to this morning because we are now learning more about the people behind the whistleblower accusations that have been coming out of the Obama administration. Were they allowed to speak? Were they told to keep quiet? What information did they know as this Benghazi event was unfolding? We now have names associated with these individuals.
We broke this news yesterday on Fox and Friends that there are in fact 3 whistleblowers who are being represented by a pair of attorneys pro bono in Washington, Joe DeGenevieve and Victoria Tenzing, and the names of these whistleblowers are Gregory N. Hicks. He's the Deputy Chief of Mission at the U.S. Embassy in Libya at the time of the Benghazi terror attack.
And let me stop you right there for a second, Tucker, because he's important, because he is the person who was on the phone with Ambassador Chris Stevens during the time of the attack. And apparently what he's going to say on Wednesday, and some of what we know from him, is that Chris Stevens was saying, "We're under attack, please help." and of course, nothing was done to help them.
For 7.5 hours. I know this took place 8 months ago, and some of the details have been lost, I think, during that time. But this consulate was under attack for 7.5 hours, and there was no response. There was no aid sent by Washington. Pretty unbelievable.
And another individual who will testify as well is Mark I. Thompson. He's a former Marine and now the Deputy Coordinator for Operations in the agency's Counterterrorism Bureau. And Eric Nordstrom, whom we've already heard from, a diplomatic security officer who was the regional security officer in Libya at the time and a top security officer in the country in the months leading up to the attacks. Senator Lindsey Graham talking about what we can expect to hear from Gregory Hicks, to your point, being on the phone, and what he says we're going to hear is going to be chilling. Listen.
You're going to be surprised to hear what he says about the interaction between him and Washington. He's the number 2 guy. He was Chris Stevens' deputy. He was on the phone with Chris right before he died. He's going to give you a chilling story of what it was like and how little help he received. And he's going to tell you about how he felt when he heard Susan Rice write this off to a spontaneous riot caused by hateful video. Everybody there knows that that was a complete political smokescreen. This is not the fog of war. She was not confused by the fog of war. This White House, 7 weeks before an election, tried to continue the narrative that bin Laden's dead, al-Qaeda's receding in terms of influence and power, and Benghazi destroyed that narrative and that storyline, and that's what this has been all about for a very long time.
Keep in mind, doubtless, defenders of the president will say, well, these whistleblowers are motivated by some kind of political animus. These are people who work for the Obama administration in career capacities. They are not political appointees. They weren't put there by George W. Bush. They're not Tea Party activists. They are, I think in every case, lifelong federal employees who expose themselves to a lot of risk to serve this country.
Part of what their lawyers have said is that the Accountability Review Board that was supposed to look into this and conduct an internal investigation of what went wrong the night of Benghazi, the Accountability Review Board says that they called all the witnesses that were important and they have gotten to the bottom of it, and that it was just a tragedy that really couldn't have been prevented. There were too many. All of our help and aid and special forces teams were too far away to scramble them to help that night. Well, 2 of these folks, not Eric Nordstrom, but the other 2, say that they were basically rebuffed by the Accountability Review Board. They wanted to share their stories, but they weren't asked or invited to. So now they have new information that they say has never been publicly heard before. Eric Nordstrom, you'll remember, has been, you've perhaps heard from him. He was on the stand at the committee in October, but he has more information that he wants to share. This is the video from October. He gave very compelling testimony then about how he and Ambassador Stevens had asked for months, saying that the security situation was deteriorating and they wanted backup, but it wasn't available for them.
And we still don't know exactly what happened. I mean, back in Washington, we know the president did not call anybody in Libya. We're pretty certain of that. But beyond that, we don't know because the White House has not released an account of what the president was doing during those hours that our consul was under attack and our ambassador was being murdered. In contrast to the hours preceding the killing of Osama bin Laden, the White House told us everything about that. That was one last thing. If you see the pictures, we put them up in the last hour, of some of the men apparently responsible for these atrocities, they don't look like randoms in a crowd from some souk. They look like professional soldiers. I don't know how you could, there they are right there. Look at these pictures and tell me if those look like members of a spontaneous crowd mad about a YouTube video.
Well,
no, they don't.
I mean, to your point, part of what is chilling about these pictures is they all appear to be carrying.
Exactly. That's exactly right. And not rocks or Molotov cocktails, but AK-47s.
Meanwhile, the attorneys for one of the whistleblowers has said that this, all signs point to a cover-up when they're speaking to Geraldo. Take a listen.
They are prepared to tell their stories truthfully and candidly. And one thing that will come out of this, Geraldo, that will be a great disappointment to a lot of people who work in government, the Accountability Review Board that was conducted by by Ambassador Pickering and Admiral Mullen will be proven to have been a cover-up, one of the worst jobs ever done in the history of governmental reporting. The Benghazi report by Pickering and Mullen is a cover-up.
$2 billion to then take export bans off. We know she sent the weapons to al-Nusra, al-Qaeda, that's now ISIS. I want him to condense and just focus in on the time we have today. I appreciate him coming on. Now Hillary and the secret emails is coming out, and he's got questions for her specifically that we'll get to in the next segment. Only got a few minutes left in this short one. But, Robert, I got to tell you, it's good news that Clinton's in so much trouble, and I think they want to bring her down because they know Benghazi's coming out, but that would end up bringing down the whole government, so they want to burn her for smaller stuff ahead of time. What do you think?
Well, I think you're right there, Alex. And again, thanks very much for having me on. I appreciate that.
Thank you, sir, for your courage.
What I think about that, yeah, I think there's getting ready to be a big explosion, not just on the Hillary thing, but all the way back to Benghazi and prior to Benghazi. Where I come in, if you remember, we talked about this on your program about 2 years ago. From information received about Stinger missiles, about weapons from the direct commercial sales program, and also weapons being pilfered from Libyan bunkers that were going back into the CIA annex at that point. During that time frame, that was partially vetted, but not completely vetted like it has been over this email scandal with Clinton. There's much more than just this email scandal with Clinton in reference to the international gun running that has been going on, which eventually involved Ambassador Stevens and the death or massacre of Ambassador Stevens and the other of his crew. Where the information that I had received was covered on your program and other programs, and also posted on my Facebook page under the heading of international gun running. It was alleged at that point that there were Stinger missiles that had gotten into radical hands out of Syria, and that was a question that was being asked to the State Department at that time through a series of dispatches by the ambassador on what to do about that information, about what they should do. I mean, you know, so now what I wanted to bring up here, and I'm trying not to ramble, we'll try to work into this and be a little more concise. There's a thing called SCIF, and that's in the Pentagon. And basically what it is, it's like a clearinghouse, like a fusion house. It's a SCIF, SCIF, is a sensitive compartmented information facility. All information, for instance, like emails from ambassadors, intelligence gathering from whether it be NATO or France or Germany or whatever, all this information goes into a SCIF or a clearinghouse, like a clearinghouse. Those things are in the Pentagon, the White House Situations Room. All this kind of stuff goes into what they call a SCIF. Those things are extremely sensitive. I mean, if you take any information out of a SCIF outside that facility, you're in violation, period.
It's a felony. It's espionage. Stay there. You've got experience with this. Walk us through it. 18-minute segment coming up. You're going to have the floor completely, Tosh, to lay it all out in articles and documents on his website. But here it is. Foreign governments gave millions to Foundation while Clinton was at the State Department. And, man, I mean, they'd give $1 million. They'd give $2 million, $2 billion total. And the next week, she'd take an export ban off. Now, who'd ever heard of this export-import, section of the State Department for weapons? Well, you heard it if you listen here. And Plumlee said that's how she was doing it. Not just allowing the shipments, she was doing it. So who knows what's in there? And that's why Hillary thought she could get away with this, is that so many companies and others are involved in all this arms smuggling that they're not going to want this to come out. So what does it mean that it is coming out? I'm going to give Mr. Plumlee the floor now for the next 16 minutes we have left in this segment to walk through how this works, how these documents go into these clearinghouses, what it means she had a second set of books. Remember, the head of the EPA had to step down over fake email. This is all illegal. Wiping her server is obstruction of justice. Now she's saying, oh, it was classified retroactively. All the State Department internal communications are secret. They're all restricted. So, again, she's playing on the public's ignorance. Tosh Plumlee, go ahead and lay it out for us.
Okay, well, thank you, Alex. I appreciate all those nice comments. I have been blessed. In some cases, I've been cursed. Sometimes we don't want to know the things we know. They're just given to us. One of the reasons that a lot of people are coming forward in the past few years is because we have watched intelligence sources have watched a slow, steady infiltration, political infiltration, implementing gatekeepers within places like SCIFs and DIA and various places to suck up and make sure that the general public does not find out the illegal stuff that's going on in reference to international gun running. There's more money, you've heard me say this before on your program, there's more money in gun running than there is in drug running. I've been blessed, as you say, to be on both sides of the fence. Now, when we went on break before, we were getting into a SCIF. When I came on your program back, I think it was 2013 or 2012, you were one of the first programs that I made the allegation that there were Stinger missiles missing from our arsenal. I made the allegation that there was high-impact weapons in Libyan bunkers that were not secure. I made the allegation at that point in time and it's recorded before the fact, and I did that for my own protection before the fact, because sometimes sunshine is the best defense people like me and others have. But at that point in time, the ambassador was also aware of this information and was sending a series of emails back and forth to the State Department. Now, the information that I had given to your program was obtained from a very sensitive NATO, or three very sensitive NATO sources in Ukraine or around Ukraine. And it involved these Libyan weapons that were getting pilfered onto the black market and involved some of the Stinger missiles. I publicly went out and said that before the fact. Now, the way it works, that information had already been filtered back to the proper agencies, and it was within what they call a SCIF. Now, a SCIF is like a fusion center, a civilian fusion center, except a SCIF is a DIA, Pentagon, military, whatever, and it's like a clearinghouse where all information worldwide goes into different compartments. And SCIF simply means it's SCIF. And it's a sensitive, compartmented information facility. It's a facility. It's an intelligence gathering facility. Now, those facilities are so secure that even if you misplace your badge and you can't swipe to get into that deal, you've got to go through hoops, unimaginable hoops from different people in security. In other words, you've got to go to the security office, you've got to talk to this guy, you've got to do that, you've got to explain to them why you don't have your badge, you've got to explain why that badge does not work. I mean, before you can even launch and get inside that SCIF. Now, also, when you get ready to complete your tour of duty for that day, that hour at that SCIF, you are cleared out of that SCIF. If you take, I mean, they look in your, they look in your pants. In some cases, you've got to unzip your pants, a security agent, if he wants you to do that, to make sure that you're not stuffing like Fawn, putting stuff in her brassiere when they were working in her and Ollie North were working inside the Pentagon. So you can't get stuff out of a SCIF. If you do, or you even attempt to, you're immediately in violation of security. And if you have a security clearance, even without due process of going to court, that security clearance is immediately pulled at that point in time until you can substantiate and prove to security that you're not doing espionage or you're not taking that information out to sell it or divulge it to the media or whatever. In other words, if they even suspect that that's what you're doing, your security clearance at that point is suspended. Now, what does this mean as far as Hillary Clinton? I have no axe to grind against the Clintons. In other words, I'm not political. I could care less, you know. I mean, I could talk about it. But that's not what I'm here for. I'm going to try to stay focused on this one thing. Information came to a SCIF. Now, I'm going to pull it back to you and I. I came on your program, and I released information that was currently going to SCIFs, but it hadn't got there yet. which I jumped the gun. I got the NATO information before my sources said, hey, we're going to make our classified field reports, and you know what happens from there. Yes, I do. You won't believe what's going on over here, Tosh. We have C-130s on a daily basis coming in with tons and tons of arms and ammunition that are being assimilated out into bunkers in Libya. Wow, I thought they were already in bunkers. They're telling me that this information is going to CIA safe houses in Jordan, Turkey, and Pakistan. I'm thinking, wow, man, I can't report this until I know specific. You've got to give me more than just what you say. Well, a few days later, it came out. I came on your program, and it was not released at the SCIF first. You were the SCIF that information was released to. You and 3 other alternative media programs, that information was released at that point in time. If I still had a security clearance, at that point right there, my clearance would have been lifted. In other words, I would have been in trouble. I would have had to stand in front of the Attorney General and explain my actions of why I talked to you. Now, that was an allegation. It was not, some of it wasn't proven at that point in time. That's 2 years ago. Now, I don't want to run you over time here, and I don't want to...
No, keep going. It's more than 2 years ago. You're on record. But please continue, because getting into now, Hillary's house of cards is coming down. It's now in the news that Obama is torpedoing her campaign. There's infighting going on.
All right. Now, at the same time that this information was going, the Attorney General and the DOJ was persecuting people for misplacing emails. So classified emails were being misplaced, or sections of those emails were being recapped to friends just in general conversations, and they were brought to trial. One of them is doing 3.5 years in prison because he released a sensitive email that was had been classified by a SCIF. Now, if I had taken servers home during my career and put them in a deal, I was immediately supposed to notify security, and they were supposed to take the Secret Service out to my house and make that house classified as a SCIF in order for me to be able to have that information in my possession at that particular house, whether it be on a non-classified server or even a government server. In other words, security had to be set up at my house in order to have that information at that location. My question I'm leading up to is, why is there a double standard in the security apparatus of this country that allows people, and I'm not going to say just Clinton, I'm going to say others. Petraeus got in a lot of trouble because he took a bunch of printed documents and put them in a drawer, and they used a sexual scandal and those deals to bring that man down and destroy his whole career for the rest of his life. Over what? He had a few papers, maybe 100, maybe 500, maybe 1,000, maybe a whole damn book, or maybe just one paper. But the point is, he had them in an unsecure facility. They were not in a compartmentalized security. They were scattered. Now we come up here and we've got a very high echelon, a Secretary of State, that now is sort of claiming someone else did this. She didn't know. Look, I testified and I was warned. Mr. Plumlee, if you discuss this outside this room, you will be charged. They even tried to file a charge on me when I was going to write a book, and that was way many years ago in 1980. And I was going to write a book called The Black Knights of Cuba. And then I was going to write a book called Deep Cover, Shallow Graves. And then I was notified, you've got to turn that manuscript over to them so that they can review it and redact, because you're giving up methods and procedures and you've taken things out of the SCIF that you wasn't authorized to do. Mr. Plumlee, you're going to go to jail if you continue on this road. Now, I don't want to get all hypered up here, but I also got IRS down on me for a total of 10 years because I was messing with SCIF stuff, classified information. In other words, I testified to committees. In other words, and the committees had classified my testimony top secret committee sensitive. And that meant that when I went back to review a year later to make sure and initial each paragraph that information was right, they told me I couldn't see that information because it had since been classified and I didn't have a clearance. So therefore, I was gagged. If I went out and talked about what I had done through Iran-Contra, the tail numbers, the aircraft numbers, working with Barry Seal, working with all kinds of different people, talking about Santa Elena, Costa Rica, I just violated a whole bunch of them just now. So, you know, I mean, what does all that mean?
It means Hillary Clinton thinks she's above the law, but obviously she isn't. And when you talk about the State Department and arms smuggling and that Hillary was involved, that has now, years later, all come out. This is a big, big deal. And then you've got questions for Hillary. We should go over some of these questions, Tosh.
Good. Appreciate that. Yeah, you do them. I don't have my copies here because I can't get on.
All right, well, they're up on your Facebook. Let's go over some of these questions. Ms. Clinton, while you were Secretary of State, were you aware that the U.S. weapons were being obtained from U.S. arsenals in Libyan bunkers and being transferred to CIA contract employees in Jordan and Turkey? Number two, were you, Ambassador Stevens, and the U.S. State Department aware of U.S. weapons?
Sure.
It continues. Were you, Ambassador Stevens, and the U.S. State Department aware U.S. weapons were being pilfered from those stockpiles and being sold on the black market in Libya, effectively falling into radical factions operating in and out of Syria? Number three, were you aware that Ambassador Stevens was concerned about the loss of American weapons? And if he mentioned this in a series of dispatches to the U.S. State Department while you were Secretary of State? You go on to say these are some of the main questions. Why are these the most important questions, Tosh?
Well, those are questions that are embedded within that SCIF that I made reference to. So the question is, if she says yes, or if she says I cannot answer those are a matter of classified information, or just a flat standard answer, I can't answer that. I can't answer that. I can't answer that. Why did you take that questions home with you? Why did you take that sensitive information that you just admitted by not answering yes or no to those three questions, let alone the 11 Benghazi questions? Why is it that you can't answer those three simple questions, yes or no? Did you know that Ambassador Stevens had contacted the State Department requesting what he should do with the information that he had received, that radicals out of Syria had just received 400 Stinger missiles from the U.S. arsenals that were shipped on C-130s to the Middle East? Now, if they say, oh, well, that's an allegation, get the flight plans of the C-130s and the refueling from the 339th or whatever. I just did something there I shouldn't have done. But there are a lot of things I shouldn't have done. But ask those questions. If she said no, and later we find out through the emails when they're going to be scrubbed. I mean, they've been scrubbed, but they're going to be found. There's going to be enough information come out that at least will point in that direction that she did know. And she took that information home. So she can't answer that as classified. Did she make the judgment that that question is a classified question? If she had that kind of sense, then she can't. How can
well, obviously, that's why the head of the EPA had to resign, was using a dummy email and nom de plumes. I mean, Hillary did the same thing with code names. She was doing illegal activity, and who knows if these are even all the emails that they say they've turned over, and it's all scrubbed. I mean, right there, she is as guilty as a cat caught in the canary cage. Let me ask you this when we come back, Tosh. We got to go to break.
Okay.
Why do you think they're going after her? I mean, I think they're going after her on smaller things. You agreed, because they know the big stuff's about to come out. I know you still talk to folks inside these different agencies. What's their take on this? We'll do a little bit of overdrive as well with Robert Tosh Plumley. I think she's a vile, also person. Clearly, you're non-political. You've said you want the truth of Benghazi to come out. A, do you agree with me that it looks like she's in deep trouble and they may be getting ready to flush her? And then B, why would they be doing that right now, Tosh Plumley?
Well, okay. We're in a diversion right now, zeroed in on Clinton and emails that were taken, classified emails that were taken out of the deal. The reason that they're zeroing in on this dog and pony show and the Trump and all this and stuff is simply for one reason, my opinion, and also documented. The Benghazi massacre was only because the ambassador found out about a very secret international gun running operation that it involved U.S. Stinger missiles, and he had the opportunity to purchase those Stinger missiles back to get them off of the international market. So he could buy those Stinger missiles back. This is classified information that I'm talking about. This is the kind of information that is in those skiffs. Now, he had an opportunity to buy that back. So they was told to stand down. Shortly after that, he's dead. The reason that she's being thrown onto the bus and the reason for this diversion is that they will not let us get into the fact that the ambassador had uncovered this gun running operation and was asking the U.S. State Department how he should handle it. What should he do with this information that he had received from on the ground, boots on the ground informants, some of them American, some of them NATO. If you remember, NATO went into those Libyan bunkers to clear them out. Where did those weapons go, and what were those weapons? This is what they don't want us to know.
And you also use the term secret government. Repeat that. Talk about the secret government and how it operates.
Well, we have a segment, and I don't want to get into conspiracy stuff and so on like that, but we have a situation that goes all the way back to before Kennedy that has been gradually, I call it the American slow coup d'etat. We have an element, whether it be international, whether it be whatever, and I don't get into all that kind of stuff, but we have a situation that has been developing for years, a slow and gradual infiltration into the CIA, into various political organizations, and it is like a secret government within itself. They manipulate. They are the gatekeepers. They stop information like what I'm talking about. They tried to stop me for a lot of years, but that's the problem right now. So now this situation of exposing this gun-running operation that goes all the way back to at least Iran-Contra, and that's what Iran-Contra is, same MO. You get an operation going, you operate it, you tweak it, you dust it off, you put it on the shelf, and then at the proper time you bring that operation back, you modify it a little bit, and you put it back out in the field for operatives like me to carry out, or others. So, again, back to what you asked me, what they're doing. They're throwing Hillary under the bus. They're giving us a dog and pony show. They're contaminating, they work with our news sources. They won't let senior editors ask certain questions. The three questions that I just asked to ask Hillary Clinton, why doesn't our mainstream media just ask her those three questions?
Sure, this is obviously the scandals tied to Benghazi. Why won't they put the horse with the carriage?
So to sum it up, what you just said, to sum it up in one sentence, the cover-up is international gun running into Benghazi that got an ambassador murdered. Not murdered, massacred. Massacred.
All right, stay there, Tosh. We're coming back with phone calls straight ahead in Overdrive, Infowars.com, PrisonPlanet.com. Robert Tosh Plumlee is our guest. I want to go to loaded phone calls for him here in just a moment. Former CIA contractor, whistleblower on Benghazi. Other points you'd like to add before we go to these calls, Robert?
Well, just other than to sum it up, that we talked about this as an allegation, 3 years ago, 2.5, 3 years ago? And now, it's all those allegations from 2.5, 3 years ago that was out here on your program have now been confirmed from more than one source, from multiple sources, and including mainstream media, who has been extremely reluctant over the years to even touch this stuff because of gatekeepers that imposed upon them as senior editors that keep good reporters from doing their job, reporting this stuff. This information that I'm talking to you on your camera, eyeball to eyeball about, has been out there. It's been out there for 3 years. It's been vetted. It's been vetted by military sources and pilots that actually flew those guns and ammunition to Jordan and Turkey and CIA annex and Libya. Jim Mars, a friend of mine, has written about it. He was on your program. We talked about it. The direct commercial sales program has been a cash cow for political interest in this country. A lot of people don't know what the direct commercial sales program is.
Well, it's got to be great for her. She runs the State Department. That's third world countries, foreign countries, dictators pay her money to her foundation, and then she takes the restriction off or secretly ships the weapons.
Well, here's the deal, right? And that she uses that as, or somebody uses that as a cutout. But the point being is those weapons and the direct commercial sales program and the Blue Lantern report that authorized weapons sales to foreign countries is controlled and monitored by the U.S. State Department. So therefore, when someone makes an application to ship high-impact weapons from the U.S. arsenal, they have to get approval. There's forms to fill out. Foreign interests are involved. They have to make sure they're not tied with a foreign country in order to get approval by the State Department to ship those arms out of this country or take those arms out of our arsenal. In this case, we shipped hundreds of thousands of arms to Libya. When the Libya fell, those arms are in bunkers. We sent, according to the Washington Post, confirmed what I told you, we sent CIA contractors to those safe houses, to the bunkers and the safe houses, to remove those weapons. What were they trying to remove them for? I mean, why didn't they same C-130s? Why didn't those C-130s fly those weapons back to this country instead of taking them to the CIA annex and then also putting them on a ship from Tripoli and going into radical hands? For instance, John McCain, and I have nothing against John McCain. Real fast, I know we're on time element here.
Yeah, he's attacked you.
Yeah, he attacked me right out, saying something about I said when the question was raised about missiles. Oh, yeah, he also said pigs fly and the sun rises in the west. Okay, I didn't attack that man. Oh, so why did that man make a statement? But 2 weeks, here's the facts. 2 weeks after that, photographed in brand new Toyota pickup trucks with a 50 caliber machine gun mounted on the back, slinging a U.S.-made Stinger missile over their shoulder, flying the ISA flag. Now, wait a minute. Come on. I didn't never say pigs fly and the sun sets in the west. I said simply this. ISA has Stinger missiles, and they got them from Libyan bunkers, period. Now, that should have been investigated by the U.S. State Department.
Well, it just shows that they think if you're the Attorney General or the Vice President or the President or the Secretary of State, you're allowed to commit crimes out in the open, and they're not invincible. It's like Nixon said, well, when you're president, something's not illegal when it's normally illegal. Well, that was proven wrong right there, and I think if Hillary falls, it's going to spread to others. I don't think they're going to be able to compartmentalize it, but I think they want to discredit her in case she shoots her mouth off, but we'll see what happens. Let's go to some calls. Let's talk to Wild Man in Texas. You're on the air with Tosh Plumley. Go ahead.
Thanks for taking my call, and God bless you both. Thanks to you all both for what you do. And as a matter of fact, I think the United States is in the toilet bowl and vortex of the toilet bowl flux as we speak, and it's like a giant alcoholic, and it's not going to get any better until we hit bottom. But my question for Mr. Plumley is, in the Benghazi murders at the behest of Hillary Clinton and all the weapons that were took from those warehouses, a few months ago you was on Alex's show and you said you was going to go investigate the 2 training camps that ISIS has across the southern border in Mexico. And I was wondering, do you think that any of those weapons that was took from them warehouses ended up down there that will end up across the border here to be used against us?
Well, okay, Wild Man from Texas, you're not one of my relatives, are you? Okay. Back when we had this great big other diversion about little kids coming across the border and all this kind of stuff, that was a diversion to take us away from Fast and Furious. The training camps, what I meant about that was more than actual training camps, is that there was infiltration from Somalis coming across through the southern borders from Mexico and Guatemala, and they were bringing some of these pilfered weapons in through Mexico into the United States, into CIA safe or into ISA safe houses that was operating in Atlanta, Georgia, and Las Vegas. That was the story at that time. If you notice, it did not go anywhere because it was overshadowed about little kids that was bringing whooping cough.
Sure, and by the way, Joe Biggs got visited by the FBI. A reporter They said they find the reports of Judicial Watch, who has the documents, very credible that there are ISIS bases over the Texas border, like you said, to fund operations with human smuggling as a business and weapons smuggling, because ISIS is an organized crime system.
Well, that's what's happening. We have breadcrumb. ISA has breadcrumb strategic places throughout the world that is just like the Underground Railroad back in the Civil War days. You pass on, pass on, pass on. You break weapons down. You send them by piecemeal through little kids and backpacks. You send them with the drugs. Well, I take that back. You don't send them with the drugs because they're zeroed in on those drugs so much. They tell them by other ways. They just drive them across the border. You can't get a 50 caliber machine gun out of the United States and drive it across the Mexican border into Mexico, but you can get a 50 caliber machine gun out of Mexico into the United States.
Listen to this.
Extremely easy.
Joe Biggs and our reporters were down there just on July 23rd. And they were down there right on the Texas border, and a truck with like 10 different packages, probably marijuana, but it could have been weapons, anything, huge boxes, just loaded in a truck and drive away. And right as the drug truck comes up, the Border Patrol is parked 100 yards away. They drive off the other way. And Joe Biggs said it looked completely staged.
Well, there's all kinds. Now we're getting off into other things. But yes, there's all kinds of things. Border Patrol is... They have their hands full. There's damn good people in Border Patrol. In fact,
no, I know there is, but we also know some have been paid off.
Oh, yes, yes, sir. And there's a lot of them right here out of Las Cruces and around in Santa Teresa and others that are damn good, and they weed out their own. And there's also down at Piedras Negras and Falcon Lake situation. They know what's going on down there. They understand that exactly. We had a meeting with intelligence unit here for the sectors 2 years ago. It was written up in SalemNews.com about having a meeting with them to talk about exactly what we're doing right now. We warned them at that point that drones at that early date 3 years ago was carrying weapons across the border, dropping them. They wasn't carrying just drugs on and dropping them. They were using ultralights and all kinds of different things to pick them up and drop them across the border. We lost a very good Border Patrol guy by the name of, well, we know who Terry was, well, it's the Peck Canyon Massacre, I call it. I mean, good gosh, we could go on and spend hours and hours and days of talking about what's been going on that border, and then that leads us into the political side of it and building great big walls and all that kind of stuff. But the point is this: weapons have been coming, not going from Mexico, from the United States to Mexico. They've been weapons coming from the Middle East, through Guatemala, through Mexico.
Sure, Fast and Furious is a distraction. Yes. Small arms from the U.S. going into Mexico. The drug cartels, mainly for whatever reason, have a fetish with German weapons, is what I've read, and that's what they're buying, is full auto. They're not buying German full auto at gun shops here in the U.S.
The point is this: they're stashing these things, and they got training sites, if you want to call them training sites, it could be, or they're flop houses, or they're safe houses, and they're getting ready to do it. Whenever it is. Intelligence will tell you that. The information that I'm telling you right now is being assimilated in those skiffs that I mentioned earlier on your program. This is not supposed to be out to the American people. You know why? Oh, they can't handle the truth.
That's right. We're skipping this break, going to the bottom of the hour in overdrive. Frank in Florida, thanks for holding her on the air with Tosh Plumlee.
Thanks, Wild Man. I'm sorry I didn't mean to get off on that.
No, you answered his question well. Go ahead, Frank.
Yeah, Mr. Plumlee, I definitely want to tell you it's a great honor. I do have a question for you, and then I have some major intel I wanted to go over off air with somebody from your staff, Alex. The question I have for you, Mr. Plumlee, excuse me. In my upbringing in New York, I had the chance to run across several people that on various levels have been in close contact with the Clintons over the years. What I'm getting from somebody very deep inside close to them is that the most potential damaging information within the emails that have been seized, or at least what they're looking for, has been satellite imagery as well as drone footage that followed the importation of the weapons into the Benghazi area, as well as everybody involved in the handling of them, as well as what they dubbed later on as being the protesters, which did lead to Ambassador Stevens' unfortunate end. I just was curious in your circles if you've heard anything of the same.
Well, when we're getting into satellite imagery, there was a lot of satellite imagery about weapons shipments going back and forth across the borders into Benghazi. In fact, the ambassador was responsible for alerting the State Department to that satellite imagery. That's what, in a way, is what's started all this stuff.
And so that's why they sent the local security force that they admittedly had hired, Al-Qaeda, to kill him, to get rid of the evidence, because they wanted to launch the next phase, bringing down Syria.
He was told to stand down on the information that he was passing to the State Department, and well, the question is, who in the State Department told him to stand down?
Gee, I wonder who was heading up the State Department.
Well, and also weapons shipments, and then also you look at campaign contributions. I mean, I slid a little Freudian slip there. Maybe I shouldn't have done that, but follow the money. If a person can get $2.5 million for talking, why aren't I getting $2.5 million for talking to you? You know, I mean, a speaking engagement and all this kind of stuff. Why is it that secret monies in slush funds and secret bank accounts being filtered and cut out and going like that? What I'm trying to say, and again, I'm going to qualify, I don't have anything axe to grind against the Clintons. It's an operation. It's been an operation that's been going on for a long time. There's more people involved in this than just the Clintons than Hillary Clinton. The point being is that there's corruption at the highest levels, and they will sacrifice their own, just like a wolf gnawing his leg to get out of a trap. In other words, that's where we're at right now with the Clintons. We got them fighting among themselves, gnawing at her leg to put her under the bus in order to save one thing. What's the motive? Follow the money, and also to stop what the ambassador had already reported to the State Department through proper channels, that there was Stinger missiles going to the radicals in Libya. Well,
what are they going to do when the Al-Qaeda people, who we know are wind-up toys of the shadow groups that they use to take our liberties, they use the threat to take our liberties, what are they going to do when they start shooting down Western airliners? How are they going to cover that up? Claim the Russians did it or something?
Well, sure, there's going to be another diversion to that. I mean, that could happen any time now. I mean, look, a Stinger missile shot down one of our helicopters, and a lot of good men got killed. Okay, that's pushed under the rug. It wasn't a Stinger missile, it was an RPG. Wait a minute. Anybody that's been in the military that's ever fired an RPG knows it's damn near impossible to shoot a moving target, especially a helicopter with an RPG, even if the helicopter's flying 200 feet off the ground. I mean, that's a phenomenal feat, and would take someone that has been highly trained on an RPG in order to be able to pull that feat off. So it was shot down by a Stinger missile, and the ambassador knew it. He reported it. It went to, quote, a skiff, like a clearinghouse, to be evaluated. Did it have any merit? Was the missiles, were there any missing missiles? How come the missiles were photographed in the back of trucks? These are things that intelligence officers and intelligence people...
How come ISIS is in U.S. Special Forces Toyotas fitted here in the United States by the hundreds? How come they're driving around in U.S.-made MRAPs, which the Iraqis didn't even have? How come they've been photographed with the Stinger missiles in the back of trucks? Exactly. They were supplied by the State Department to be the army of the Saudi Arabian takeover.
Well, the State Department would use a cutout on that. In other words, but the point being, it was approved by the State Department to go to a subcontractor or a series of subcontractors to carry out and implement to get those deals in there. It's a money deal. It's not that they're saying, okay, we want to support ISIS to overthrow and cut people's heads off. No, we can make $500 million if we let them have that Toyota truck, and if we let them mount that 50 cal, or if we give them those Stinger missiles. The ambassador wanted to buy back those Stinger missiles for $50,000 a missile, and he was denied. In other words, he would stand down.
No, I hear you. That is just insane. I mean, it's...
Well, and who did that? The State Department did that. Now, did Hillary Clinton do that? I don't know. But ask her those three questions, and if she says yes or no, or they're classified, then I want to know why the ambassador was killed.
Let's move quick now. Thank you, Frank. Good points. Anthony in Florida, you're on the air. Quick question. I want to get a lot in now.
Okay. I'm sorry if I rattled you.
No, you're great. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just have a question for Tosh Plumlee. What is his thoughts on the fact that it's pretty obvious that NATO is trying to pick a fight with Vladimir Putin, trying to basically reigniting the Cold War? Because as far as I'm concerned, they can't sell us this fake war on terror, and so I was wondering what is his thoughts on them trying to pick a fight with.
Sure, the new Cold War with massing troops and weapons all around Russia right now. That's official. Thank you, Anthony. Good question. Tosh?
Very good. Anthony, everybody right now, international saying, is jockeying for position. That's the whole thing. Why are they jockeying for position? Again, it's a money deal, the IMF, whatever you want to call it. So is Putin starting a war with NATO, the Ukraine? I mean, but when you get all through whatever their motives are, the bottom line is follow the money. Russia is broke. The United States is broke. The only way to solve being in poverty as a nation is to start a war, start a brush war, sell the weapons. That's where the money comes from. In other words, the reason they got into weapons and drugs is that there's a hell of a lot of money in drugs that can buy the weapons. But when you can buy the weapons and triple your money on the black market, it doesn't matter. Politics doesn't play into that.
Sure, well, it's one thing to sell AK-47s to Al-Qaeda. That's bad enough. To give them Stinger missiles just shows this elite is completely out of their minds. They'll never cover that up. Thank you so much, Tim. Great question. Or did I just hang up another caller? Is Tim next? Tim in FEMA Region 9. Go ahead. You're on the air.
Hello, Tosh and Alex. I'll make this quick. I was in Israel from 74 to 80, and I'm just saying that I was working there when we came across information on Red-Eye and Stinger missiles, close to 10 to 15,000 of them that had been brought into Libya, which subsequently wound up in Afghanistan when the Russian forces were there. And we turned all that information over to the Mossad and Shin Bet at that particular time. But it was, so this has been going on for close to 30 years or more. And if I can state one more thing is that we're not going to stop this. There's no way it can be stopped. The only thing that we can do is inform people. So that was basically my comment.
Well, where do you think all this is going, and what is the point of giving Al-Qaeda, under all these new names, 400 Stinger missiles?
Alex, what it's about is, you see, in order to understand what's taking place in current events today, we must keep our eye on Israel and what's going to take place there. Because this all ties into biblical prophecy as to bringing this, because, you know, God is not going to allow this thing to go on forever. And his prophetic time clock is winding down. This is bringing us up to Ezekiel chapter 38, the battle of Gog and Magog, and the other nations, Gomer and all of her bands, which is Germany, the European Union, and so forth. They are marching towards this in order to bring in, to facilitate a new world order, a one-world government, which is satanically controlled.
I agree with you. God bless you. I appreciate your call. You know, I'm sorry to Jay and Michael and others. Tosh, you've got about a minute for closing comments. Thank you so much.
Okay, well, I'm going to close up real fast here. This was exposed on your program, if you want to call it that, 3 years ago. It has now been vetted and confirmed. As far as Hillary Clinton, in my personal opinion, if they're going to put other people in jail that have done a lot less than her because of emails, then she should be indicted. No question about that. As far as the gun and arms deal, it's going to continue, like the gentleman just said. It's been going on for over 30 years. I've been involved in one way or another with this
said
damn near all my
what she
life.
said about when they said somebody's lying? She said it's not me.
Okay, first of all, we have some honorable people here. The members of the 3 other families, they are honorable people. And I don't want to be political. To politicize the death of my son would be dishonoring to Ty. All I can do, and I did bring my notebook that I carry every year. I've carried these for years. And I'll just read what I said, and then I will let people, whether you're Democrat or Republican or Independent, draw your own conclusions.
You wrote this down right after.
Yes. This is what I will write down, or I wrote down. I gave Hillary a hug and shook her hand, and she said, "We are going to have the filmmaker arrested who was responsible for the death of your son."
Yeah. And I remember that evening when Ty's body flew in, I was on the phone with my dad, and that was exactly what he was saying. That was the information we had at the time, and that was what I had believed, and I had no correspondence directly but through him, and that was what we were going on really for the first over a month after he passed.
What do you feel when you hear the congressional investigators say no stand-down order was given? That's not how it went down. Despite the testimonials of the guys who fought the fight, and you hear partisans say, "Would you move on? Benghazi's done."
Well, I think what you said there about the individuals who actually were on the ground, I really believe that is what holds the most weight. The individuals on the ground, no matter what, there's multiple people there who are corroborating, and I would say that they're those multiple people who have identical testimonies on that.
What do you think, Charles?
Okay. The men on the ground are totally reputable. They risk their lives because of integrity, because of honor. They don't lie. Mm-hmm. They have no motivation to lie. And even if, okay, look at the facts. Ty and the rest of them would have left immediately if there'd been no stand-down order.
That's what
they would have gone immediately.
And that's what the three guys said.
Yes, exactly.
I want to ask you about that, Pat.
Those are the facts.
Oz, Tonto, and Tig said without question they believed if they had been allowed to go when the calls came in, when they said we're all going to die unless somebody gets over here, that they could have saved the life of Ambassador Stevens and your son. I mean, what kind of accountability do you want to see?
I want to see Hillary in jail. It was her department, and she's been lying, and she's turned the whole country into a bunch of liars.
It's an extraordinary thing when you think that, Charles, your son died trying to help Pat's son, Ambassador Stevens, and others, and you met some of the CIA agents whose lives he did save at the premiere last night. I've got to go, but I want to ask you, what was that like?
It was surreal. It really putting faces and names to real people. When these type of things are mentioned on the news so many times, they're nameless faces or faceless names, and you don't really get the human aspect of it. But meeting them face to face, that really it puts it in a whole new light and really shows. It was Ty's character said, "Well, this is about the end of our contract work," and the response from one of his comrades was, "Well, that's a small price to pay for doing the right thing and being able to live with themselves." And that right there is just the true hallmark of just the kind of heroes that they were and the men that they were.
He's the one who said, "None of you has to go, but we're their only chance." Yeah. And they did go. And they paid a high price for their heroism last night, but they saved American lives. Thank you both so much for being here, Pat.